So what does it mean to be a person? This is one of my favorite philosophical questions. But let's make it more interesting. Let's make it more personal. What does it mean to be you? What does it mean to be me? What is identity? Now, as good philosophers, we need to begin by defining our terms. Otherwise, we end up talking about different things and we don't even realize it. When I say identity, I mean that which makes something what it is. And as soon as I say that, you know we're in the realm of ontology. Now, ontology can sound like a highfalutin word, but it's not that big of a deal. It just means the study of being, and exploring what makes something be the thing that it is. Okay, so how do we know what things are? Well, one approach is to start compiling a lot of facts about the object we're studying. Think back to elementary school science, right? We're making observations, we're gathering data, and when we're looking at a thing, when we have a sufficiently big enough pile of facts about the thing, it allows us to distinguish it from all the other things. We can identify it, determine its identity from our observations on the outside. So when we apply that approach to the question, what is a person, we get this lovely taxonomic chart, right? What is a person? A member of the species Homo sapiens. And what is that? Well, now we know, right? We have a category of being. We have a bucket full of facts that allows us to say, this is a human being, right? Homo sapiens, genetics, morphology, et cetera, et cetera. And I can look at you, and I know that you are a human being. I don't need to ask you. It doesn't matter if you think you are or not, because I can observe, right? I can look at you as an object and make determinations about the type of thing you are with this approach. Now, it's a very powerful approach. It's a useful approach. But notice how problematic it becomes when we aim it at you or aim it at me. What is a you? What is a me? What is a Zelly? What is a Bonard? The question sounds weird. It doesn't make sense because I'm not a what, I'm a who. Persons aren't objects. Think about your driver's license. Here we have a lovely Maryland driver's license, authentic with the blue crab, which should be red with Old Bay on it. But driver's licenses have important facts, right? It's got your name, your address, your sex. And you know that old adage, if you want to know who I am, just take a look at my license. Okay, said no one ever. That's not a thing, right? It's silly. Why? Because none of us would ever say, yeah, I can be reduced to this pile of facts. And licenses are small, but even if they were huge, even if our driver's license was a long scroll full of facts about us, none of us would feel comfortable saying, you can understand who I am by reading this exceedingly long list of facts about me. The reality is, you will always be bigger than any pile of facts that can be accumulated about you. If you want to know who I am, you need to understand my ways of being in the world. You need to understand what I do, what drives me. You need to know me personally, or at least you need to understand my story. So here's a fact about me. I was born in Mexico. True fact. Fun fact. What does that tell you about who I am? In and of itself, not much. So let me tell you a little bit about my story. I was born in Mexico. I came to the US when I was around 9. I didn't speak English. We were undocumented. We were poor. It was really hard. I was excited to come to the US, but it was heartbreaking to leave everything and everyone I knew behind. I suffered injustices. My loved ones did too. And we were the lucky ones because eventually we were able to become US citizens. Now I'm a dual national. I'm a citizen of the United States and a citizen of Mexico. I studied philosophy, I studied law, and I actually wrote a book about philosophy and law and race in the United States. Because race has always been a very interesting component of my American story. Now, you know I'm Mexican because I just told you, but I'm willing to bet not many of you looked at me and thought, that's a Mexican dude right there. In the United States, that just doesn't happen. As we go through the world, doing what human beings do, we're observing, we're gathering data, putting facts that we accumulate about the different objects on them to categorize them. As I move through this world, through the United States, people look at me and they gather data, facts about me from their observations. And whatever box they have labeled Mexican, I don't belong in that box. Which is really interesting to me because I am Mexican. I'm as Mexican as you get. My parents are Mexican, my grandparents are Mexican, my whole family's Mexican. And if you know Mexico, you know that we come in all different shapes, colors, and sizes. If you just look at my family, my sisters and my cousins, we span the spectrum, skin tones and hair types and eye colors. But what is Mexican identity? What does it mean to be Mexican American in contemporary America? What is Latinidad? What is Latino identity? These are the questions that drive me. We began with the fact I was born in Mexico. But that fact didn't have very much meaning in and of itself. But when I told you the context of my lived experience, when you started to hear my story, now we're getting to the meaningful stuff. Now you're getting a glimpse into who I am. Philosophy can get a bad rap, often well-deserved. That it's about dusty old ideas by dusty old men, about a world that doesn't exist anymore. Why does philosophy even matter? But I think it's a very exciting time to be studying philosophy. There's a lot of important work happening right now, especially about these questions of identity. Questions that you can't answer from the outside, looking at identities like objects, where we can compile lists of facts about them. You have to come at them from the inside, taking into account the lived experiences of the people who embody these identities. Consider race. We now know that race has no biological basis. It's not a thing biologically. There's no piles of facts we can accumulate that would allow us to categorize people by racial categories. That would be racist. We don't do that. Not anymore. At least not at Montgomery College. But okay, so what does that mean? Does that mean race is gone? It's disappeared? We can stop talking about it now? No, race is still here. Makes a big difference. But what is it then? What do we do with it? How do we make sense of it? What does it mean to be black in contemporary America? Why is it so important to say Black Lives Matter? How about we study some black scholars on the subject? What about sex and gender? What is womanhood? How about we study some women scholars? And what's with all these rainbow flags we see everywhere? What's the big deal? What is queer identity? How about we study queer scholars on these topics? So you see, if you take one of my classes, if I'm lucky enough to have you, we will study Aristotle and Kant and a bunch of these old guys because they matter. But we'll also be diving into the cutting edge work being done by scholars, looking out into the same world we look into, grappling with the same questions that we're grappling with. These aren't scholars with marble busts looking out into a world that doesn't exist anymore. It's our shared world. And by studying these things, we can enter into this conversation, which is so important. What does it mean to be a person? What are these identities? Not as objects, but listening to the lived experiences of the folks who embody them, especially the marginalized ones, voices that have been silenced. That's why philosophy matters.